The morning began, like any other in the quiet town of Ashoknagar, Chennai. The sun slowly crept over the red roofs, lighting up the narrow streets where children chased each other with paper kites, and vendors arranged vegetables in neat piles. Birds chirped from telephone wires, and bicycles rattled past small shops. It was the kind of morning that held no warning, no sign that something would break a mother's heart before the sun even reached its peak. Lakshmi Pichai stood by her small kitchen window, pouring tea into 2 glasses. One was for herself, the other for her neighbor, Mrs. Vaijya, who usually came over at this hour. Lakshmi's hands were aged but steady, her fingers showing the quiet strength of someone who had raised children with nothing but dreams in her eyes and determination in her bones. She wore a simple cotton sari, her gray hair tied back in a bun. Nothing about her looked extraordinary yet, everything about her was. She sat down, sipped her tea, and looked at the small framed photo of Sundar on the wooden shelf. He was smiling, his graduation cap slightly tilted, his eyes bright. She smiled too, thinking about how far he had come from this very home, through the narrow school corridors of Vanavani, to the great halls of Stanford and the leadership of Google. But life had a strange way of testing even the quietest hearts. The knock on the door was sharp and sudden. Lakshmi walked to open it, expecting Mrs. Vijaya instead. It was a man she had never seen before, middle-aged, with a sharp look in his eyes that carried no warmth. "Are you Sundar, Pichai's mother?" he asked, stepping in without waiting. Lakshmi nodded, unsure. "Yes, ... Can I help you?" He looked around, frowning at the simplicity of the home. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "This is where he came from. I thought the mother of the Google CEO would be living in a palace by now." Lakshmi's smile faded. "We are happy with what we have," she said gently. He scoffed. "Clearly, no air conditioning, paint peeling from the walls, and you're still wearing those 5-rupee slippers. Seems like your son forgot where he came from. More maybe you did." For a moment, Lakshmi stood still. She wasn't someone who reacted to rudeness. She had faced worse days without food, nights without electricity, months when Sundar had to share a single textbook with 3 classmates. But this stranger had pierced something deeper. Not because of his words, but because he insulted not her poverty, but her pride. Before she could respond, he continued, "I'm a journalist. I'm writing a piece on powerful people, from humble beginnings. Wanted to see if the stories are real. But this?" He laughed again. "This feels like a bad script." He turned, pulled out his phone, and snapped a photo of her without asking. "Please," Lakshmi said, her voice now steady but firm. "Don't take pictures without permission." He ignored her, still looking around with that same amused face. What did you teach him anyway? How to escape, how to make billions, and forget the dust and the heat of this place. Lakshmi opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She wasn't angry, she was hurt. Not because she needed validation from a stranger, but because for the first time, someone had stood in her home and disrespected not just her, but every sacrifice she had made. Just then, a soft voice spoke from the doorway. "She taught me everything." The man turned. Lakshmi turned to Dot. There stood Sundar, his bag still hanging from one shoulder, eyes calm but sharp. He had arrived a few hours earlier, quietly, planning to surprise his mother. He hadn't expected to hear those words as he walked through the gate. The journalist stammered, I didn't know you were here." Sundar stepped forward slowly. "And yet you felt free to insult the woman who gave me everything. Just because her walls aren't painted and she wears slippers instead of shoes." The man tried to smile. "I was just curious." Sundar interrupted. "Then let me tell you, my mother taught me how to stay calm when others shout. She taught me how to keep moving when the world says stop. She taught me to use what I had, not complain about what I didn't. She didn't teach me to escape this place. She taught me to carry it with pride." The journalist lowered his eyes. Sundar wasn't finished. You came here looking for a story. But this home isn't a story. It's a foundation. Every crack in this wall is a chapter. Every meal she skipped so I could study is a paragraph. And you will not reduce it to a headline. Lakshmi felt her throat tighten. She looked at her son, not the CEO, not the global figure, but the boy she raised. And she saw something that mattered more than success. She saw a character. The journalist nodded awkwardly, put away his phone, and without another word, walked out the door. For a few moments, there was silence, the kind that hangs in the air like a pause in music waiting to be felt. Then Sundar walked over, took his mother's hand, and sat beside her on the floor. You didn't have to say anything, she whispered. I know, he replied, softly. But you shouldn't have to listen to that alone. Lakshmi smiled through the tears that had started to gather. Chai. Sundar laughed gently. Always. As she poured the tea, her hands still trembled slightly, but her heart felt light again. She had raised her son with love, strength, and quiet. Digniton. In return, he had stood up, not with anger, but with grace. But this was only the beginning, because the photo the journalist took, it would soon go viral, and not in the way anyone expected. News spreads fast, especially when truth shines brighter than scandal. Within hours, the journalist's photo of Lakshmi Pichai had made its way online. It was posted with a caption meant to mock her. This is the house of the CEO of Google. Even his mother still lives like this. But something unexpected happened. People didn't laugh. They didn't criticize. They didn't say Sundar should have bought her a mansion. Instead, they paused, and then they shared. First, it was a few thoughtful comments. This is what real strength looks like. She raised a global leader with wisdom, not wealth. We need more mothers like Lakshmi Pichai. By midnight, Lakshmi's name was trending, not for her simplicity, but for her strength. Not because her home was small, but because her heart was so big. But while the internet was busy praising her, Lakshmi was still sitting in her kitchen, completely unaware. She and Sundar had stayed up late, talking. Not about business, not about Silicon Valley, but about the old times. About when they couldn't afford a refrigerator. About the time Sundar had scored full marks in science, and she had cried alone in the kitchen, afraid she wouldn't be able to afford his next year's school books. You remember how you always gave me the bigger piece of mango? Sundar smiled, holding the edge of the table. Lakshmi laughed. You thought it was luck. I cut them uneven on purpose. You always said the smaller one was sweeter. She looked down. That's what mothers do. Sundar's face softened. You gave up so much for me. Lakshmi shook her head. I didn't give up. I gave forward. Just then, Sundar's phone buzzed. He ignored it at first, but it kept buzzing. Message after message. Missed calls. Notifications lighting up. Finally, he opened one. It was a message from his assistant in California. She had attached the article and a screenshot of his mother's photo. The journalist had shared it on his personal blog, mocking the simplicity of Lakshmi's life. But the tone of the assistant's message was different. Your mother is being called the pride of India. People are asking for interviews. This story, it's not what he expected. It's turning into something else. Sundar scrolled through hundreds of comments. Admiration, gratitude, inspiration. People were calling Lakshmi the symbol of real motherhood, the face of quiet resilience, the strength behind greatness. He showed the screen to Lakshmi. She blinked. Why are they talking about me? Because, Sundar said gently, the world is tired of diamonds. It wants to see gold. Again, real gold. Like you. Lakshmi shook her head slowly. I never wanted attention, I know, and that's why you deserve it. Sundar took a deep breath. He stood up, walked to the doorway, then turned back. What if we use this moment? Lakshmi looked confused. Use it for what? To help other mothers like you. To tell their stories. To create a foundation in your name. Foundation, she repeated, her voice low. Yes, for single mothers. For mothers raising children with nothing but strength and faith. We'll give them support, education, tools. We'll call it the Lakshmi Foundation. Lakshmi's eyes filled with tears. But I am no one. You're the reason someone became someone. That night, neither of them slept. Plans were made on scraps of paper. Sundar called his team in California. He told them what he wanted. No corporate banners, no brand logos. Just stories. Just real people. Just hope. And yet, as they worked, something unexpected arrived. The journalist, the same man who had mocked her. He stood at her door the next morning. No camera, no phone. Just a plain white envelope in his hand. Lakshmi opened the door. He didn't step in. I owe you an apology, he said. She stayed silent. I wrote that post in arrogance, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I didn't. No, it would take a different turn. I didn't know. It would make people cry, or feel proud, or call their own mothers, just to say thank you. Lakshmi looked at him with the same calm she had always carried. You didn't see me, she said softly. You saw your story. He nodded. You're right, and I was wrong. He handed her the envelope. I don't deserve to tell your story, but I've written something else. It's my apology. Not just to you, but to every mother I've misunderstood. She accepted the envelope quietly. Sundar stepped beside her. The man looked at Sundar and added, Your reply, what you said it, made me see things differently. I want to learn. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Sundar said, Then start by listening, and he invited him in. They sat in the same small kitchen, the same table. 3 cups of tea this time. They didn't talk about Google. They didn't talk about business. They talked about childhood, about sacrifice, about dignity, about the beauty of doing the right thing when no one's watching. And for the first time, the journalist listened, not as a writer, but as a student. By evening, the first draft of the Lakshmi Foundation was ready. A team in Delhi began collecting names of mothers in need. Former teachers who had lost jobs, widows raising daughters, women in rural towns who taught under trees. They would be the first to be honored. And then, something no one expected happened. A letter arrived from the Prime Minister's office, handwritten. It said to Lakshmi Pichai, Your son is a national treasure, but today, we celebrate the root, not the fruit. Thank you for reminding the nation what greatness looks like in silence. Lakshmi folded the letter slowly, placed it beside her son's graduation photo. She smiled, not because the world had noticed her, but because she had stayed true to herself, and that was enough. 3 weeks had passed since Lakshmi Pichai's name began echoing across homes, phones, and hearts. Yet inside her small house in Chennai, life moved with the same gentle rhythm. The kettle still whistled in the morning. The ceiling fan still creaked softly at night. She still folded clothes with care and hummed the same lullabies she used to sing when Sundar was little. But outside that small home, something powerful was growing. The Lakshmi Foundation had already helped over 100 mothers. Each story was more heartbreaking than the last. A widow who walked 3 miles daily to send her son to school. A mother who sold vegetables all day and stitched clothes at night to keep her daughter in college. They weren't on magazine covers. They weren't on television, but their strengths like Lakshmi's was shining now. The foundation didn't give luxury. It gave dignity, basic income support, school supplies, mobile libraries, health camps. But most importantly, it gave attention to those who were always overlooked. Sundar returned to the US to lead his team, but stayed connected to the project daily. Every evening, no matter the time zone, he would call Lakshmi and ask, How many today? She would reply with names, stories, and sometimes tears. But not everyone was happy about it. One morning, while Lakshmi was sitting on her front step, sorting vegetables, 2 women from the neighborhood approached her. They didn't smile. You think you're better than us now? One of them asked. arms folded. Lakshmi looked up, surprised. "We've lived here for years," the other woman added. "Now everyone's calling you a queen because your son made it. What about our sons, our daughters?" Lakshmi stood slowly, brushing her hands against her. "Sorry. I never asked to be called anything," she said gently. "And I haven't forgotten who I am." "Then why do cameras come here every week?" The first woman snapped. "Why are there reporters outside your door?" Lakshmi's heart ached, not from their words, but from the pain behind them. Jealousy doesn't grow in bad hearts, it grows in tired ones. In people who've struggled too long without being seen. "Do you want to come inside?" Lakshmi asked softly. They both hesitated. "Come," she said again, with a small smile. "Have tea? Let's talk." Inside her home, over cups of tea and a plate of banana chips, she listened to them. She heard about their struggles, their fears, their anger, their hope for their children, and then she made a promise. "Your children matter too. Let the foundation help. Let their stories be told." 1 week later, the foundation added their daughters to the scholarship list. A video was posted not of Lakshmi, but of these two mothers, speaking about their dreams, and slowly, the wall between them began to fade. But this time, the challenge didn't come from the neighborhood. It came from someone far away. A famous television anchor in the United States criticized Sundar during a live broadcast. He said, "The CEO of Google is busy showing off his poor Indian mother, as if simplicity is a strategy. Where was this humility when tech companies were making billions?" The words were sharp, they were cold, and they hurt. Sundar's assistant called him immediately. "Do you want to respond?" Sundar paused for a long time before replying. "No," he said, "but my mother will." Back in Chennai, Sundar, Lakshmi. She sat before the phone screen, confused. Why would he say such a thing? "Some people don't understand love unless it's wrapped in gold," Sundar replied. "What should I do?" she asked. "Be yourself," he said, "but let your voice be heard." So the next day, a short video was posted on the Lakshmi Foundation page. Lakshmi sat in her simple kitchen, her hair tied back, a soft light shining through the curtain behind her. She looked directly into the camera, and she spoke. "I am Lakshmi Pichai. I am not a story to impress anyone. I am not poor in the way you think. I raised my son with values that money can't buy, and I will continue helping mothers, not for cameras, but because I know how it feels to go unnoticed." She smiled gently. "And to the man who mocked me, I offer you TIFF, you ever choose to visit." The video was 1 minute and 32 seconds. Within 3 hours, it had 1 million views. Within a day, it had 10 million celebrities reposted it. Teachers used it in classrooms. Mothers in villages cried watching it. And the anchor, he never responded again. Instead, he quietly deleted his video. Lakshmi didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. She simply folded her clothes, swept her floor, and kept listening to new mothers who called the foundation every day. But something had shifted. For the first time, women from across India, urban and rural, rich and poor, began sending their stories in postcards, handwritten, with small photos. The foundation received hundreds a week, and so, Sundar proposed an idea. "Let's publish a book," he said during one of their nightly calls. "A book of stories from one mother to another. We'll call it From Lakshmi's Heart." Lakshmi agreed, but she had one request. "Don't put my photo on the cover." "Why?" Sundar asked. "Because it's not about me. It's about all of us." And that was how the first volume of stories began. Mothers whose names were never known, whose voices were never heard, were now being read in libraries, schools, and homes around the world. A librarian in Paris kept a copy near the entrance. A school in Kenya translated it into Swahili. An old man in Argentina said it reminded him of his own mother. And back in Lakshmi read every new letter she received by hand. She didn't care about the praise. She cared about the pain behind the ink. And so in the middle of all this change, something else happened. A girl from a small village in Tamil Nadu walked for 2 days to meet Lakshmi. Her name was Manju. She had nothing but a torn school bag, dusty shoes, and hope in her eyes. When she arrived, she stood at Lakshmi's door, hands folded. Lakshmi opened the door and smiled. "Come in," Manju cried as she entered. "I read about you," she said. "Everyone said you were kind." They were right. Lakshmi placed her hand on Manju's shoulder. "Tell me your story." And that story? It would change everything. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Lakshmi sat beside Manju on the floor, gently handing her a glass of water. The girl's eyes were red, her voice trembling as she spoke. "My amma used to read to me every night," Manju said, clutching the old cloth bag on her lap. "We didn't have books, but she would tell me stories ones she made up. Stories about courage, about little girls who were poor but clever. She said one day I'd go to a big school." Lakshmi smiled. "She sounds strong." Manju's eyes dropped. "She was, until they took everything." "Who did?" Lakshmi asked softly. Manju looked up. "My amma was a school teacher in a village called Vellarai. She taught under a tree, because the school building was broken. She used her salary to buy chalk, to fix benches, to even feed students who came hungry. When she asked the officials for repairs, they ignored her. When she went again, they warned her. And one day, they dismissed her completely." Lakshmi's hands tightened around her sari pleats. "They said she was causing problems," said she. "Was making noise for no reason. We had no money left. She started falling sick. Manju's voice broke. "She died last year." Lakshmi felt her throat tighten. She reached out and held the girl's hand gently. "I didn't come here for money," Manju whispered. "I came because I want to be like her. And I heard you. You listen." The room fell silent again. Lakshmi's eyes filled with tears. "You remind me of Sundar when he was your age. Same quiet strength." "Then help me," Manju said, her voice rising with emotion. "Not just for me, for the others in my village. The children are still sitting under trees. The roof is still broken." Lakshmi nodded. "We will go now?" Manju asked, stunned. Double quotes. "Yes," Lakshmi replied. "If we wait, who will speak for them?" Within the hour, the two boarded a small bus, heading toward the remote village of Vellarai. The road was rough, the heat was sharp, but Lakshmi didn't complain. When they arrived, a group of children stood under a mango tree, reading from tattered pages. A young man barefoot holding a chalkboard was teaching them multiplication. Lakshmi walked toward him and said, "May I join?" He looked confused but nodded. She sat down on the dirt with the children. No cameras, no press, just learning and listening. After the lesson ended, the villagers gathered around. They had all heard of Lakshmi Pichai, but they didn't expect her to come, and certainly not to sit on the ground with their children. An old woman stepped forward. "Madam, why have you come all the way here?" Lakshmi looked around at the cracked walls of the abandoned school building. She pointed. "Because that," she said, "should not be empty." A soft cheer rose from the villagers. But then came resistance. The next day, as Lakshmi met with the village head to request permission for repairs, he frowned. "This is not your place," he said sharply. "You're not from here." Lakshmi responded calmly. "No, but education belongs to everyone." "Why now?" he asked, folding his arms. "You're famous. You think we'll roll out red carpets?" "I didn't come for carpets," she said quietly. "I came to fix a roof." He shook his head. "Too much noise. I don't want trouble." The old teacher Manju's mother, she created problems. Don't become like her. Lakshmi stood still, her voice soft, but unshaken. "I will become like her, because she didn't ask for comfort. She asked for justice. The next day, a video of Lakshmi sitting under the broken school roof with the children was posted online. It showed her teaching letters with chalk on the floor. Her words were clear. This roof may be broken, but their dreams are not. Within 2 days, engineers from the Lakshmi Foundation arrived. Within a week, construction began. New desks were delivered. A proper blackboard was installed. Books were donated. And a small statue of Manju's mother was placed near the new gate with a sign that read, "The teacher who didn't stop speaking." The news spread across the country, but with attention came backlash. Some politicians questioned the foundation's influence. A few news channels called it a publicity stunt. One anchor sneered, "Is this a charity or a stage?" Lakshmi said nothing. Instead, she went to the next village, and the next, and the next. Each time, listening, each time, lifting someone's voice. Meanwhile, Sundar, watching all this from the US, began receiving unexpected messages, emails from students. Calls from journalists. One message stood out. It was from a girl in the United States named Sarah. She wrote, "My mother is a cleaner. Everyone laughs at her accent. But after I watched your mother's video, I told my classmates, my mother is my hero. Thank you for reminding me." Sundar showed it to his team. "We need to translate these stories," he said, "not just for India but for the world." And so, the foundation launched a global initiative called Unsung Roots. Stories of mothers from Africa, South America, Asia, and even rural America were collected and translated. Each story showed the same truth. Mothers everywhere were the silent architects of greatness, but just when it seemed things were blooming, something happened that threatened to tear it all down. A news report surfaced. It accused the Lakshmi Foundation of misusing funds. An anonymous email claimed money had been spent on unnecessary expenses. Headlines blazed. Was it all a lie? Google CEO's mother under question. Sundar called immediately. "Amma, don't worry. We'll fix this." Lakshmi.com, as ever, replied, "I'm not afraid of storms. I raised you in one." But deep down, she knew this was different. Because this time, people were not just watching, they were waiting. The air in Chennai felt heavier than usual. Outside Lakshmi Pichai's house, reporters had gathered once again. Only this time, their expressions weren't filled with admiration. They were looking for a crack, a fault, a weakness. They wanted to know if the foundation that had become a symbol of strength was built on something dishonest. The accusation had spread like wildfire. Money from the Lakshmi Foundation was misused. No one knew who had sent the anonymous email. No name, no evidence. Just a whisper that had become a storm. Lakshmi sat quietly inside her home, watching the crowd through the curtain. Her tea remained untouched. Her phone kept ringing calls from news agencies, friends, even strangers. She answered none. But the one call she did answer came from Sundar. "Oma, the investigation team will arrive tomorrow. We've opened every account, every document, every detail. There's nothing to hide." Lakshmi spoke slowly. "I trust the truth. It walks slowly, but it never trips." Sundar sighed. "People are forgetting who you are." Lakshmi replied, "It's easy to forget love when fear knocks at the door." The next morning, a team of investigators arrived at the Lakshmi Foundation office in Chennai, led by a sharp-eyed officer named Ananya Rao. The team went through every transaction, every bank statement, every receipt. Meanwhile, the media ran stories filled with doubt. Did fame blind the foundation? Questions raised over Google CEO's mother's charity work. From chai to controversy, Lakshmi refused to hide. She continued visiting villages. She continued teaching children, but in every place she went, she noticed the difference. Some eyes no longer sparkled with admiration. Some whispers followed her as she walked. One afternoon, she visited a school in Salem where a teacher hesitated to welcome her. "I'm sorry, madam," the teacher said nervously. "The board has asked us to avoid public attention. Lakshmi smiled, though her heart ached. It's all right. I'm not here for attention. I'm here for the children. And she sat outside, under a tree, reading stories to 10 students who had come running to meet her. But the real storm came when a television channel aired a debate titled, "Is the Lakshmi Foundation a scam wrapped in a sari?" One panelist said, "These stories of sacrifice are sweet, but where's the proof?" Another mocked, "Even her tea and slippers became symbols of honesty. Now what?" As Lakshmi watched the segment, she did not cry, but she did something no one expected. She went to the studio. The next day, without an invitation, without a script, she walked into the lobby of the news channel, asked to meet the anchor, and when they refused, she simply sat down. "I'll wait," she said. An hour later, a junior producer approached her. "Madam, the cameras are live right now. I'll speak," Lakshmi said calmly. "Not for myself. For every mother whose truth is being questioned, just because someone sent an email." Finally, the anchor agreed. The segment began. Lakshmi sat opposite the anchor, her eyes steady. "You've become a national figure," he said. "But now there are questions. Are you afraid?" Lakshmi replied softly, "No, because the work is honest." "The investigation is still ongoing," he said. "Wouldn't it be wiser to wait before speaking?" "If someone throws mud at you," she said, "do you wait for the rain, or do you clean it yourself?" The anchor leaned forward. "Why should the public believe you?" Lakshmi looked into the camera and said, "I don't ask for belief. I ask for attention to truth. Every rupee spent by the foundation is accounted for. Every mother helped is a witness. You ask about proof? Look at the children going to school. Look at the villages where walls have been rebuilt. If I am guilty of anything, it is of believing that small hands deserve big dreams." The audience in the studio clapped softly. The anchor paused, unsure how to continue. But outside, things were about to change. Because in the investigation office, something had been found. Not misuse, but manipulation. A former employee of a partnered agency had forged invoices. The amounts never touched the Lakshmi Foundation's core funds. It was a side contract that had gone unnoticed till now. Ananya, Ro called Sundar personally. "The foundation is clean," she said, "but you need to see something." She sent over the evidence. A name, a face. The whistleblower was none other than the same journalist who had once visited Lakshmi's home, the man who took the mocking photo and shared it online. He had applied for a position within the foundation, and was rejected. His email, disguised under a fake name, was meant to hurt, not to help. When Sundar told Lakshmi, she didn't show anger. She simply said, "Hurt people often try to hurt others." But the truth could no longer be hidden. A press conference was held the next day. Ananya, Ro stood before the cameras and declared, "The Lakshmi Foundation is innocent of all charges. The accusations were false. The money trail is clean. The purpose is clear." News channels changed their tone instantly. "Truth triumphs, Sundar. Pichai's mother stands tall. From doubt to dignity, Lakshmi Pichai wins hearts again." But Lakshmi didn't celebrate. Instead, she asked the foundation to release a new video in it. She spoke simply, "I forgive the person who accused us, because forgiveness is not weakness. It is freedom." But she added, "Let this be a lesson, just for us, but for every person trying to build something true. Protect your purpose. And when questioned, answer not with anger, but with light." That evening, Sundar called, "AMMA. You didn't deserve this." Lakshmi replied, "We don't choose the storms. We choose how to walk through them." He stayed silent for a moment, then said, "You've made me stronger." Lakshmi looked at his face on the screen. "No, Beta. You were always strong. You just needed a mirror." The next morning, the foundation's team gathered in Chennai. They had expected fear, silence, maybe even retreat. Instead, Lakshmi stood. before them and said, "Let's begin again. There is more work to do, more mothers to help, and we now walk with clearer eyes, stronger hearts, and even deeper trust." The room erupted in quiet applause, but far away, in a small room in another village, a child had been listening, and what she did next, no one could have predicted. Rain fell gently over the rooftops of Chennai that morning. It wasn't a storm, just the kind of quiet rain that made people pause, sip hot tea, and reflect. Inside the Lakshmi Foundation office, everyone moved with calm purpose. Phones rang softly, papers shuffled, volunteers sorted supplies. Despite everything they had faced, the accusations, the whispers, the doubt, one truth remained. The mission had never changed. Lakshmi Pichai sat by the window, reading a letter written in a child's handwriting. It was from Manju, but this time, it wasn't just a thank you note, it was an invitation. "Lakshmi, read the final lines again, slowly. There is someone you need to meet. Someone whose heart is louder than her voice." A week later, Lakshmi traveled again. Not to a city, not to a famous school, but to a small tribal village tucked between two hills in Tamil Nadu. The roads were narrow, muddy from the rain, and the bus rattled with every turn. But Lakshmi felt no discomfort. She had walked harder roads in life. She had walked them barefoot. At the village entrance, Manju waited with a smile. "She's been waiting for you," Manju said softly. "Who?" Lakshmi asked. "Manj." You didn't answer with words. Instead, she led Lakshmi down a small dirt path, past homes made of clay and bamboo, to a quiet clearing beneath a tree. There sat a girl no older than 9. Her name was Thara. She was deaf. She had never spoken a single word in her life, and yet, she had done something extraordinary. When the rumors about the foundation had spread, Thara had seen her village elders stop reading the books that the foundation had donated. They began to doubt. Some said the help had come with lies. Others said the kindness was just a show. But Thara, she had drawn pictures of Lakshmi sitting under trees, teaching children. She had drawn Sundar handing over books. She had drawn her own mother receiving food packages when no one else had helped. And then, using only pictures and signs, she went to every hut in the village. One by one, she told her story. She didn't speak, but she was heard. She changed everyone's mind. Manju whispered. They saw what she saw. Not lies, but love. Lakshmi knelt beside Thara, tears in her eyes. The girl reached into her small bag and handed Lakshmi a picture. It showed a woman in a sari holding a torch. Around her stood children from different villages. Above them, the sky was dark, but in her hand, the light was bright. Lakshmi held the drawing to her chest. "This," she whispered, "is why we began." From that moment, a new idea took root, a new program within the Lakshmi Foundation, created not for the loudest voices, but for the quietest ones. They called it Silent Strength. It focused on children with disabilities, those who were deaf, blind, autistic, or speech impaired. The forgotten within the forgotten. Resources were reallocated. Sign language teachers were hired. Braille books were printed. Therapy centers were set up in rural districts. And at the launch event, held in the very village where Thara lived, Lakshmi stood before a crowd of hundreds. Most of them had never seen a stage before. Most had never been invited to speak. But Lakshmi didn't begin with a speech. She stepped back, and Thara walked forward, using signs, and with an interpreter by her side, she told her story. And for the first time, the entire crowd saw that courage was not always loud. Sometimes, it came in silence. That video, titled "The Girl Who Never Spoke, But Changed Everything," went viral across the world. Schools from over 20 countries reached out to the foundation governments, requested training programs. A letter arrived from the Secretary General of the United Nations. It said, "We honor Lakshmi Pichai, not just for building an organization, but for building a new kind of future." And yet, Lakshmi never let it change her. When the foundation offered to name a building after her, she gently refused. "Name it after the first mother who ever taught under a tree," she said. "Her name may be lost, but her spirit isn't." One night, Sundar visited her in person. No cameras, no press. He sat on the old wooden bench beside her house. They watched the stars in silence. Finally, Sundar said, "Uma, you've changed the world." Lakshmi smiled. "No, beta. I just did what mothers do." He turned to her. "What do? "They give everything," she replied, "and expect nothing." He held her hand. "You never asked me for anything, Oma. Not even when we had nothing." "I asked you for one thing," she said, "but you didn't realize." "What was it?" "To stay kind." Sundar looked down, tears in his eyes. "I hope I've kept that promise." Lakshmi leaned her head on his shoulder. "You have." And that night, under a sky filled with quiet stars, mother and son sat in peace, not as the world saw them, but as they truly were: simple, honest, grateful. Meanwhile, across India, thousands of children were now learning in repaired classrooms. Thousands of mothers were receiving support, and in hundreds of villages, women sat together, reading aloud from a book titled From Lakshmi's Heart. But the story didn't end there, because kindness never ends. 1 year later, Thera would stand on an international stage, not to speak, but to sign. She would receive an award on behalf of the Lakshmi Foundation, and in the crowd, Lakshmi would sit quietly, clapping with her whole heart. When asked later what the secret to all this was, Lakshmi replied, "Listen to the ones no one listens to. That's where the real wisdom is." And perhaps that is the message the world needed most. 2 years had passed, but the memory of that first morning, the moment when a stranger stepped into Lakshmi Pika's home and disrespected her simplicity, still lingered like a faded bruise. Not painful anymore, but never forgotten. That single moment had set into motion a wave of change so powerful that it had touched people far beyond borders, beyond languages, beyond wealth or fame. Today, Chennai was buzzing with a different kind of energy. There was no scandal, no media frenzy, no headlines of doubt. Instead, the city was preparing for something it had never witnessed before: a national tribute to mothers who had changed lives through silent, steady sacrifice. It wasn't a political event. It wasn't organized by celebrities. It was organized by the children of those mothers, the sons and daughters who now led classrooms, businesses, hospitals, farms, and even space agents, because someone once gave up their dreams so they could chase theirs. And at the center of this tribute stood Lakshmi, Pichai, but not in the spotlight. She refused the stage. Instead, she chose to sit in the front row beside other mothers, women who worked as sweepers, teachers, nurses, tea vendors, housemaids, and widows who had raised doctors and scientists. Sundar stood on the stage, not as a tech giant, not as a global icon, but as a son. He looked at the crowd, then paused. "I've given many speeches in many countries," he said softly, "but this is the only one that matters." A silence fell over the crowd, because everything I've achieved, started with a woman who gave me her strength, her silence, her dreams, and never asked for anything in return. He turned to look at Lakshmi. "This tribute isn't for one mother. It's for every mother who sat up all night sewing to pay school fees. For every mother who went hungry so her child could eat. For every mother who was mocked for being simple, for not knowing English, for not wearing silk, but whose values raised leaders." The audience applauded. Some wiped their tears. Sundar stepped down from the stage and walked to Lakshmi. He knelt, took her hand, and said, "Amma, the world called me a CEO, but you made me a human being first." Lakshmi's eyes filled, but her smile remained calm. "I didn't do much," she whispered. "I just loved you right." As the tribute continued, stories were shared. Mothers were honored. Children read aloud letters they had written but never sent, and then came a surprise. The President of India, who had joined via video, made an announcement. We are proud to declare that the National Open School Initiative will now carry the name Lakshmi Pathshala to honor the spirit of mothers who teach not with books, but with love. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Lakshmi shook her head slowly, humbled beyond words, and that's when a little girl in a simple green dress walked up to her. It was Thara, now 10. She stood beside Lakshmi, placed a small medal in her hand, and signed one sentence with the help of her interpreter. You gave us a voice when no one else did. Lakshmi held her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, You are the future. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in gold and soft orange, something magical happened. Villages across India lit small oil lamps not in temples, but in homes, schools, and community centers, all placed beside the photo of a mother, not just Lakshmi, but every mother who had quietly carried the world. Across social media, a new message began to trend. #ThankYou AMMA videos poured in. Children from every corner of the country sharing stories of their mothers, their struggles, their sacrifices. A child in Ladakh thanked his mother for waking at 4 in the morning to boil water in winter. A girl in Gujarat showed how her mother had taught 12 children under a street lamp after losing her job. A boy in Kerala filmed his mother repairing a bicycle, saying, She fixed my future. Lakshmi didn't watch these videos for praise. She watched them because they proved something she had always believed. Deep inside her heart, quiet love creates loud change. Later that night, in her little home where it had all begun, Lakshmi sat on the floor with Sundar. The cameras were gone. The applause had faded. Only the soft breeze from the window and the distant sound of a temple bell remained. Sundar turned to her. Uma, he said, do you ever miss the days when no one knew our names? She smiled. Sometimes. Why? Because peace lives in the places where no one is looking. He nodded. But now, she added, the world is looking at the right places. Not at gold, not at power, but at mothers, at values, at stories that were never told. What next? Sundar asked. Lakshmi closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. We keep going. We find more voices, more mothers. We remind the world again and again until it stops forgetting. Sundar leaned back and looked at the ceiling. You're unstoppable, he whispered. No, she said with a chuckle. I'm just a mother, and that was the truth. Not a superhero, not a celebrity, just a mother, but in a world that needed healing. That was the most powerful thing one could be. And somewhere, in a small village far away, another little girl looked at her mother and said, if she could do it, so can you. And just like that, a new light was born. Not from money, not from fame, but from a love that never needed to be seen to be real.